Mm.
All right, can you see the deck? No?
It's
Almost.
loading.
Loading.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks. So, all right. You ever have one of those days when you're about to start a community meeting and everything stops working, like all your peripherals don't work all of a sudden and got to try to connect things and you don't know why? Okay, that's the day that I'm having. Okay, so thanks, Sheeri. This meeting is being recorded and archived on the wiki, where we also have meeting notes and other logistics. So please check that out if you haven't already. This is our updated list of TSC voting members. And we'll do intros in just a second, but wanted to advise folks that we have a new communication channel. We have a Mastodon account, so check that out. It's on the tech-friendly Fostodon server over there. Okay, so why don't we do introductions? It's our custom to start with the presenters kind of order. And that means our first victim is Sheeri. You can take it away.
I'm muted. I'm Sheeri Cabral. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I currently work for Calibra, where I am the product manager for technical lineage on ETL tools. And I'm excited to be in a room full of people who know what that means. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Harel.
Hi, everyone. I'm in New York City, and I work for Astronomer, where I'm the engineering and product lead for everything data observability. Great to see everyone. And same as Sheeri, I love this meeting so much.
Thanks, Harel. Next up is Maciej.
Hey, I'm Maciej. I'm software engineer at Getting Data, and I'm in Warsaw, Poland. And I do not identify as victim, Michael. So yeah, thanks.
That's good. Okay, Ernie.
Ernie Ostick, product lead over at Manta Software, and lineage for all kinds of things, but ETL in particular. Sheeri, I'm glad you brought that up. That's near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Next is Kuba.
Hey, I'm Kuba. I also work as Maciej with in Getting Data as software engineer, and I'm trying to actively contribute to OpenLineage. And I also live in Warsaw, Poland, so I have lots of common with Maciej.
Thanks. Next is Minkyu.
Hi, I am Minkyu Park, and I am a software engineer at Astronomer, working for observability team, and I love this meeting too. I mean, everybody loves meeting, so yeah, and good to see you all.
Thanks. And Mike Collado.
Hey, Mike Collado. I'm in Seattle, Washington. I'm a staff software engineer at Astronomer. I also love ETLs, but I hate meetings. But it's okay because I love you guys. So I'm willing to put up with the meeting.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is D. Henneberger. Daniel.
Yeah, hey. So I was formerly Datakin. I'm off building a database product right now. I have nothing. What do you decide?
Well, welcome. Thanks. And next is Willie.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Willie. I'm the project lead and co-creator of Marquez.
I work at Astronomer on data observability. So it's great to see new faces, but also old faces. And I'm thinking about you, Danny. It's really amazing to see you. Yeah. Xdata can hear as well.
Cool. Thank you. Next, I believe, is Sam.
Hey guys, my name is Sam Holmberg. I am also an engineer at Astronomer, except I do front-end observability. So I try to pop in every couple meetings to see what's going on. Yeah, nice to join today.
Thanks. Next on my screen is Will.
Continuing with the love, I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Will Johnson. I am a Microsoft employee and also OpenLineage committer. And I missed the past couple of sessions, so I'm very, very thankful to be here with you all and to, again, enjoy the community as so much we all do.
Thanks. And next, we have Mandy.
Hello, everybody. It's Mandy Chessel. I am a committer on OpenLineage, but I'm also the lead of the Agero project, which is one of the integrating projects. And so again, I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks. John.
Hey guys, I work with Michael on on the community team at Astronomer, so I'm here to help out how I can.
Thanks. And next is Peter.
Hi, I'm Petr Hayek, and I'm part of product team at Manta. And we operate at OpenLineage, and generally I'm curious what's going on in the OpenLineage community. So I'll be listening today, and that's it.
Thank you. Apologies for butchering your name, probably not for the first time.
No problem, no problem.
Thank you. And I'm Michael. I'm based in the Providence, Rhode Island area. I'm on the community team at Astronomer. So nice to see everybody as always. Let's move on to the agenda for this month. Have an exciting announcement to share, and then we'll go over the recent release since the last meeting. We've got an update on column level lineage coming from Maciej, an overview of recent improvements to the Airflow integration from Kuba, got a discussion item on what it means to really truly implement the spec from Sheeri, and got an announcement and a little bit of background on namespaces before open discussion. So that announcement that I teased, if you didn't see the announcement on Slack or Twitter or wherever else we put it, OpenLineage now has incubation status with the LFAI and Data Foundation. That was as of the 15th of last month, where we made a presentation to the TAC and got the vote, got approval of the board. That required some things that we recently did or we have long had. 300 stars on GitHub. We crossed that threshold a long time ago. But we recently did earn the silver badge from the OpenSSF, and we got a sponsor. And this unlocks funding, additional services, visibility for the project from the foundation. And next up in that bucket is graduation, which we hope to be applying for soon. Okay. Moving on to recent releases, we've had one release from the project since our last meeting. I'll just hit the highlights. Oh, Will?
Sorry, Michael. Yeah, I wanted to ask, is there a link to that announcement from LF and AI and data? Like I'd like to share that. I'd like to just share that on social media. Where can I find the official announcement for this?
I will look for it and happily share it with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that'd be super cool to be able to share. I didn't see it on our OpenLineage blog, so yeah, if I can share this one, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And yeah, well, if Will didn't know, then we need to do a better job on the publicity front. I mean, honestly. So sorry about that, Will. let's see. So our most recent release is 19.2. And I think others on the call would probably agree that a big highlight here is the addition of column level lineage to the SQL parser. So that really important addition continues to grow across the project. That was 1432, 1461. Also in the SQL integration, we added a new facet, the extraction error run facet, to give us a little bit more information about issues with the SQL parser, such as failed parsing. And let's see here. What else do we have? Also some key additions to the Airflow integration, as we tend to have. Thanks to Kengo with 1288, we've got a new extractor for Trino. Also, a new extractor for S3 file transform operators and a standardized run facet. In addition to a new nominal time run facet and ownership job facet. So as we've tended to do, we're continuing to build out the Airflow integration. But we also have, in addition to the DBT integration with support for Postgres, that was 1417. And a key development in the proxy, we now have a skeleton of a client-side proxy. And we did some important CI work there as well to publish a Docker image. And last but not least, in Spark, we are now passing the config parameters to the OpenLineage client, which should ease the process of creating new custom extractors there. And we don't really cover fixes in these release overviews, but I wanted to give a shout out to a new contributor, Sarah, if I'm pronouncing the contributor's name correctly, for fix in the Spark and Java clients. But thanks to all our contributors, including Tomasz and Willie, Minkyu, Julian, Kuba, Kengo, Maciej, and Piotr, and others not listed here who contributed additions, changes, and fixes to the release. We have another one scheduled around the 1st of next month, so look for that. And moving on, we have an update on column level lineage from Maciej, so I'll turn it over to him.
Hey, so this is kind of intended to follow up on last month's Piotr presentation, which described how core of our parser looks like and like how it's structured. So now I'm going to tell more about how we use it in actual integrations and what have we done since then. So to like not miss people who didn't watch the previous presentation, what is our SQL parser and why do we even use it? So first, it's a Rust library. Sorry, my cat has clicked on my keyboard. Okay, going back.
Did it compile?
No, it's like cut off my sound. So yeah, it's those F keys. But back to the presentation. So it's a Rust library, right? But we use it not only for Rust. We use it basically for Python, for Java integrations, for everything that we can like that uses SQL, and we can extract data from it that we don't have a better source for it. So it's not a perfect solution, right? It's parsing SQL. We might miss some stuff. We might not implement stuff that some databases are using. And it's thought to be a 80-20 solution. So we parse like giant majority of standard SQL of what people are actually doing, but then we are not like implementing some complex additions to the language. Like I have this Snowflake copy into table. which has like giant grammar for the command that does like one thing basically. And we use it this in Airflow, in Great Expectations integrations right now. And what we've done together with this column level lineage is support for Java by using JNE crate. And get the next slide. So yeah, we started the parser as a table level lineage solution only, like approximately a year ago. And since then, Piotr has done great work, added a lot of core support for column level lineage, extraction it. But to add, to like go through the all the way and have the column level emitted in all of our integrations, it has to go through some language layers through our integration, and there was still some things to do. For example, we use something called PyO3 to communicate, to basically expose our Rust API to our Airflow and Great Expectations integration. So what we need to do is basically describe to Python how this Rust structure looks like and what we can expect from it being there. And the same is for Java, although the interface for Java called GNI looks kind of old for now. And still, it's the best tool we have right now until Java like 20 something allows us to use more modern technology. And basically, it was kind of a groundwork. Basically, you have to, you know, debugging this isn't very funny, because if you like miss a parameter in Java constructor, you will get a weird error that doesn't explain what happens. But right now we have all of this done, and we can see on the next slide. Like, I'm not sure if this is, maybe you could zoom in, or basically I have the same SQL statement. On the left, I have like Python code that's parsing it. On the right, I have like Java code that's parsing it. It's basically the same. It has the same result, and it works very similarly, like, but of course respects some language idiomatic constructs. So that's one thing. It's like fully released right now, and we can use it in Python and Java. And next one, there was another addition. So error reporting, right? We had a issue where you had a very complex list of statements that you passed, and it looks very complex, but underneath it was just setting some parameters, like Hive has set some variables to the execution engine. Other like databases do some kind of things like that too. So I just, you know, put this example like, hey, you can like alter function, then just insert data from dataset, from input dataset to output dataset, and then do something that we still don't understand. And our parser will be able to parse it, report the errors that it doesn't understand those constructs, or maybe they're wrong, right? Because you can have a buggy SQL code somewhere, and report this in OpenLineage event. And there's one more thing that we want to do. Okay, and there's one more thing, like all this SQL extractor-based Airflow. Can I get next slide? All of these SQL extractor based extractors like PostgreSQL extractor, Snowflake extractor now understand open column level lineage and emit it, and you know, you can see it in OpenLineage events. And there is one more thing we want to do. Spark integration has a thing called JDBC relation, and it basically is when you try to read data from some JDBC database, like MySQL here, and you know, Snowflake. You can connect to different databases from Spark and then, you know, process the data as you want in Spark. But this is kind of black box for Spark. So it knows how to connect to database, how to execute that as the SQL, but it doesn't understand. So right now we can parse this SQL ourselves and understand what it's trying to do on this other database and get the lineage that way. So this is like still to do and will probably be in the crease, but we have all the foundation needed to do it. And that's it. Any questions maybe?
I think Will has a question.
Yes, thank you. So Maciej, just one question on the errors that would be emitted, right? What's your expectation for what an end user or a Marquez user would do with that information, right? Is it really more of a benefit for like, hey, report back to us in the community and we'll, you know, maybe eventually go and resolve, like that's one scenario we will fix and we will, you know, improve the parser? Or is there something that the end user, you envision that the end user could do to resolve that issue, right? Or is it, again, more diagnostics for us?
That depends on the nature of an error, right?
Okay.
If your SQL statement is buggy, and
okay.
I mean, you probably will find this some another way, right? But it still will report it to you.
Okay.
If we can't parse it, then it's a good way to, you know, get the error message and show us what's happening. And you know, I think another important part is that we can parse what we can parse right now. We just when we couldn't parse some statement in a list of statements, we failed before, and now we parse. So this is like an additional benefit of doing this way.
That makes total sense. I'm just thinking about like how do we? Oh, please,
one more thing. So now you can easily distinguish between case where your like job does not emit any data sets, and the case where we failed, right? So before it wasn't very understandable for an user, right? Hey, I have an OpenLineage event and it emits nothing.
Yeah.
And is it really something worth that was really right for integration to do or wrong? Now we know, right? If you don't get an SQL error and use SQL extractor, then it means we parse that SQL and it just basically there's nothing there.
Okay, that makes total sense. I guess my only other question for you is like, you know, Marquez is our reference, right? So how would this get displayed in Marquez? Just because, you know, some of the implementations that the others are doing outside of Marquez don't necessarily show all the facets, right? So I guess in Marquez, is it showing that facet, saying, hey, for this event, here's the full facet and includes that error message so that you can exactly distinguish that this was an event that occurred and we just didn't get anything out of it because your SQL was not understood. That's displayed in Marquez. Is that
yes, correct? I think it's like generically displayed as a, you know, JSON facet, as a run facet, because it's a run facet. Second option is that we added some time ago to Marquez, and I actually worked on it. Is like a list of raw events. You have a UI that you can, you know, click on and then get all the events that your Marquez instance have received.
Got it. Super.
And yeah, another like a colleague, Vlad, made the UI for it, and shout out to him.
Nice. Okay, thank you, Maciej. Great additions, and thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, Maciej, for that detailed overview. Let's move on to the Airflow integration, and we'll hear from Kuba.
Yep, and thank you, Maciej. So as a brief introduction for those who know or may not know, the concept of facets in OpenLineage. Those are pieces of metadata that provide some context to basic items in OpenLineage, which are run, job, or dataset. So the example information is, for example, the schema of the table, which is a dataset in OpenLineage, or the SQL job facet that just provides SQL query that was sent, for example, from Airflow. So most of the facets are defined in OpenLineage spec, but we also have some custom facets. The concept of custom facets was created just to allow users to adjust their integration to the systems that they want to integrate to. So for example, we have custom facets for Airflow, for Spark, I believe too. Mike, could you go next? So there was a situation where Airflow had multiple custom facets, and one of them was especially growing with no control, I would say. This was Airflow version run facet, and it started to contain lots of information that was not really related to Airflow version somehow. So we decided to introduce one composite Airflow run facet that has properties for task, DAG, task instance, and DAG run, which are, I believe, the most common like objects used in Airflow, and they provide most information of what we want to retrieve from Airflow. And in the same time, we want to deprecate old custom facets, which are Airflow run args, version, and map task. But the whole information is not lost. This is just moved to proper places in Airflow run facets. So for example, map task information will be under task instance because this is the property for this one. But we also are aware that we should be back compatible at least for some time. So for now, we are sending both old and new facets from Airflow. Mike, could you please go? Just a quick follow-up of what's been added, just to highlight. Maciej added this great integration for Airflow. So now SQL extractors send column level lineage. But also we focused on the facet standardization. So for example, we introduced processing engine run facet in OpenLineage spec. And the reason for that was to have facet that gives the information of what the processing engine, which could be, for example, Airflow or Spark or any other integration that we have or customer has, like dbt or Great Expectation. And in this facet, we want to put the version of the engine. The other thing is that we improved support for nominal start and end time. This was possible because we make use of data interval. This is the concept introduced only in Airflow 2. And it allows us to match nominal end time towards the actual next schedule time. This is quite important change because the schedule time and next schedule time might be misleading sometimes, especially for those who don't really know Airflow or the concept of schedule time in Airflow. So now nominal start and end times mean the actual time interval between which we are sure that the Airflow operates on. So if, for example, you have interval set daily, we know that the act that just started is responsible for the previous day. That's just some simple example. And the last thing for facet standardization is that we've added DAG ownership to ownership job facets. So you may see that we kind of moving some of the information from some old facets to the facets that already exist, or we created some additional just to have this have them standardized. And I also wanted to keep some applause, I think, for Kengi, I think Seki, Kengo Seki, sorry. He becomes a great contributor, and he added the support for Trino and for S3 file transform. So if he ever hears that, thank you. So that's it, and if anyone has questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Well, thank you very much, Kuba, for that detailed information about recent improvements to the Airflow integration. Appreciate it. I think we should move on to our next item. Sheeri, would you like to take it away?
Sure. I did a big presentation. I'm not going to rehash the whole presentation. I know that not everyone was here last time, so I'm not going to redo the whole presentation. It's been recorded. You can see it. But what I will do, if you would be so kind as to let me share my screen, I will go through the last couple of slides just as a refresher. So I went through a whole thing about, what does it mean to meet the OpenLineage spec? And that's not a question that we have an answer to. Meeting specs in general does not need 100% compliance, just like, do you meet the SQL spec? Not everyone does. And that second bullet point is what it means, right? What does it mean? It means that you will likely have compatibility. When you say something like, do you meet the spec? Why does it matter? And the reason it matters is if I'm a producer of OpenLineage, that means that a consumer can probably consume what I produce. And if I'm a consumer, then I can consume what a producer produced. So that is the basics of it. And right now, for example, OpenLineage has a pretty good ecosystem page with consumers and producers. And this is it's a great page, but it doesn't say what exactly it does, right? So I'm just going to pick something random here. A library converts Dagster events to OpenLineage events and emits them to an OpenLineage backend. Great. But what is in there, right? And one of the things is that operational lineage isn't very well defined. It's not, okay, in order to have operational lineage, what you need is a start time and an end time and the number of rows affected and whether there's an error message, right? In OpenLineage, we do have some of those as mandatory, right? Start time, end time, those things are mandatory. I also went through the fact that you actually can't have an OpenLineage event, I guess, or a lineage event with just one run event, right? You have to have a status. Each run event has its own status. And so you have to have a status of start and a status of complete or abort or error. So, so that's kind of an interesting learning curve for people, I think, right? I think people come and they're like, oh, OpenLineage, how do I download that? And it's like, it's not really a thing you download. And even to look at what does a payload look like, I ended up having to go to like Marquez and their API to see like, what does a payload kind of look like? And the idea of this discussion is to just kind of say, like, how do we change, for example, this page? Like, do we know that Dagster is compatible with Amundsen, right? Like, I have no idea. Does Dagster produce the things that Amundsen consumes, right? So one thing would be, how do we develop a common language on what we do without having 20 pages of bullet points of we support this and that, but not this and that? And so, yeah, so this is our discussion. What does it mean to be compliant with a spec? And, you know, if somebody just has a query and a start time and an end time, is that technically operational lineage? Would they be a producer if they can produce it and a consumer if they consume it? What could be put into a self-test to just kind of say, this is what you produce, this is what you consume? So with that, I'll leave it open to discussion.
Yeah, I think this is extremely important if we want this standard to be adopted. What we did with Agerio is, because we have plug-in points and the ability for different vendors to connect into our ecosystem, we actually had a compliance test with different profiles defined, and you run your component against the compliance test, and you get a report saying, you know, you're compliant with this, you don't support this, but you're compliant in the way you don't support it, this you're not compliant with. And we run, you know, a few thousand tests on something, and if you are compliant, then you get a badge. But this sort of definition of the profiles, I think, is the most valuable piece, because then, as you say, we can then match consumers and producers and have a really good view on what's likely to exchange between the two partners. Does that make sense?
Great. And you can see I'm in a document here, and this document is open right now. Anyone can edit it. And if we, you know, it's Google Docs, so if somebody accidentally deletes it, we can get history. If we need to lock it down, we will. But this is just kind of a place to put in notes, conclusions, you know, any decisions made and things like that. So Mandy, did I, when you had a test, I was opening the file, is it a self-test, or is it just, do people have to apply and then they send you the code and then Agerio tests it?
No. We have it in our main repositories. Anyone can download and run it at any time against the technology. So if a vendor says, hey, I'm compliant, you know, this is my results, actually their customers can insist of a demonstration during a POC, for example, before buying it. So if a vendor lies, they get caught out, basically. So we do it not by administering the test, but providing the test cases to everybody.
Yes. And you said, and when you say test cases, how many approximately? There were a lot, and I didn't get the...
So it depends. So we have the potential is about 25,000 tests, but it issues requests to the technology we're testing, and then depending on their response, it then spawns additional tests. So it's very, if the capability doesn't support very many profiles, then of course they're not my only test run. But if you've got something that supports everything, then it can take 6 hours, and it's pretty intensive. So I mean, I think the important thing is not necessarily how many tests we have, but the fact that there are profiles, there are clear rules about what it means to support it, but also rules about how you demonstrate there's a compliant way to not support it. And then there's you just behaved completely inappropriately for that particular profile. If that makes sense. Yeah, because what we're worried about is that as we connect in different tools into our ecosystem, is that a badly behaved one will cause integrity problems in the other members. So it's really about, you know, if something has passed the test, it will do no harm. That's really what we're looking for in the Agerio case. And actually, I suspect there is a similar thing with OpenLineage, because from the observability, you may be making business decisions and quality decisions on how things are running. So I suspect this question of how much you can trust what you get based on the compliance figure is actually quite important.
Yes, I know, I agree, right? There's you could ignore something, or you could, do something with it that would be bad, right? So you want to know that, like, oh, we're missing this piece of information so that you can make an informed decision.
Yeah. Because
So,
I'm sorry, come on. Sorry, off you go. I've been talking too much.
sorry, no, I was just curious about, so I can see it's pretty simple to write some tests to confirm whether a producer is producing compliant messages, right? But what about for consumers, right? So like, you know, there's a lot of different facets, right? So for example, like output statistics is one. Like it's pretty easy to say, okay, we can send this message to a consumer, and if they return a 500 message or a 500 error status code, then we know that, you know, they're not accepting valid OpenLineage messages. But can we confirm that if they actually return a 200 or a 201 or something, can we confirm that they've actually done the correct thing with the various facets?
Well, I think the term correct thing has a lot of weight to it. What is the correct thing to be doing? Like if someone's consuming OpenLineage, it's to some end of their own, right? And so if they, I think there's a danger in being prescriptive about that.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering is how do we test that they are actually handling these custom facets in what do we call compliant, right? In that
Yeah,
scenario.
I think what do we call compliant is the right question here.
So first I wouldn't like add custom facets here because they are by definition custom, and you can have your own private facets in your private implementation of some producer, and your consumer can do some things with them, which isn't really relevant. And second, there can be consumers that straight up ignore some things, right? They don't care about operational metadata. They don't care about even runtime statistics. They just want, for example, to have a view of simplest table lineage, and they don't need to actually use anything but core OpenLineage structures. 0 facets are required for this. So that's like hard to define what's correct, right, from consumer point of view. And one thing, Sheeri, you said that you need start and complete events. And I think what we need to do, if we haven't done already somewhere, is to like define only complete event as required. Because, you know, if you don't care about operational use, you don't care about start event, and you just double things up. And sometimes we even don't have those events. So
Quick thoughts on the like the test things. It might be, while I think that defining what compliant or like doing the correct is next to impossible. What we could do that might be useful is set up a suite that will send like a bunch of diverse OpenLineage events that cover like a broad swath of various producers and facets, so that if somebody is trying to set up a consumer, they can quickly test a whole bunch of like the space, I guess, against their consumer and see what doesn't probably get processed right. That could be quite useful. And it's not quite a test, but it kind of fills some of the same niche.
Yeah, I think there are two broad categories, right? Like on one end, you have the producers of facet. They want to know they're producing like the schema facet properly, for example, and there's certain set of features implemented correctly. And on the other end, there's what you were talking about, and the consumers. And similarly, right? They can test, they understand a set of facets properly. So I think there's like a baseline that's very, very simple, right? Like what Sheeri was hinting at, and you need like a job ID, you need like the data set input and outputs, right? So that's kind of the baseline, and we can, at the minimum, have general compliance with that. And then we can have something like Mandy was mentioning with the modules in Nigeria. Like I think most of the facets are optional, but I think they also group in certain category, right? We have a whole area of like dealing with data quality. There's a whole area of dealing with more like compliance, and it's kind of, I would probably column lineage like fits in that category a little bit. So we could also just say, hey, do you implement correctly all that subset of the facet, right? And like part of the compliance could be a little more granular. and define, hey, I need a way to know that I produced these and these feature properly, like column level lineage, if that's what I care about, or like data quality metrics, if that's what I care about. So I think, yeah, this is an area that has been talked about before in this community, but we haven't never like pushed it all the way. So I really appreciate this discussion, and I'm hoping that from this document, Sheeri, we can end up with a good specification of how we do that, right? And it's kind of like better, and it's, you know, the next time someone wants to implement OpenLineage, we just make it easier and easier for them to join this community.
Great. Yeah, I think also that we're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for, okay, by February 10th, we'll have a complete suite, right? Like at some point it's just, hey, if you're a consumer, how did you test it? Like give us, maybe you have some test cases that you can share with us. Should we have some kind of data, database and data, in the database, or some kind of sample schema with sample data that could be put into any database that you can then test against.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up, Marquez being an implementation of OpenLineage, I think it's one of the biggest offenders of not really expressing how it's using certain facets. So for one, we don't really say, hey, we're using the dataset facet, the schema facet in particular, to build out data sets and the fields and associate with that data set as well. And then also the versioning that we apply. We also store the raw lineage events on the back end. So I don't know, there could be this communication that happens from the consumer. It's like, if you give me these facets, I will do this feature for you, or I will do this for you on the back end. But right now, I think it's just send Marquez OpenLineage events. It will do its thing and apply its versioning logic, and that's pretty much it. But not much is being communicated on what facets are important to the consumer. Anyway, I think that's just more of a general comment and just gaps in communication there.
That is I think that's very wise, right? Because not all facets are created equal.
Yeah, so we have made some attempts at documenting that a little better. Somewhere in the documentation, we have a matrix that shows you for each integration, like for BigQuery, we collect this, for Spark, we collect this, for Snowflake, we collect this, right? But it's been very manual. And I think with what you're describing, I think there's the opportunity to make something like more formal and automated that makes it really clear who produces what, that it's been validated against the schemas, like we define all the facets as schemas. And same thing for the consumers, right? They can state what they're consuming, and that can be validated and so on. So I think that would be really useful to the ecosystem. In somewhat, the custom facets are also interesting. The point of custom facet in letting people document some metadata without necessarily needing approval from anyone, right? It's just their metadata, they can just publish it. So, and one of the goals of that is to kind of enable emergence of certain things, right? That can be then included in the core spec. So, I mean, that could be also a way to document that a bit better and let people specify what they've been defining themselves.
That's interesting, because I feel like that is in the spec, that when you do a custom facet, the naming convention includes like what the system is, right? So if Egeria makes up a custom facet, they would have like Egeria, I think, is the first or second. There's 4 different items there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're supposed to publish your schema somewhere as well, right? For the facet.
Okay. Keep talking. I love this discussion. Don't wait for me. We've got a recording, so we can always go back and put more info in here.
I have one question right now. Like, how would we define failing test right now for compliance with OpenLineage, right?
Failing a test as a producer or as a consumer?
As a consumer, probably, or maybe as a producer too. I think
the consumer
simple thing that isn't giving us anything is like 500 on on posting the event, right? We can have a system like Marquez that accepts pretty much every event, but then it's just stored somewhere, right?
At a minimum, on the producer side, we could make it easy to validate the facets that you generate within the schema, right, that are defined. Like I think right now, we don't necessarily do this. You could have a validation mode that says, hey, I'm producing this. A first order validation is just making sure I'm validating something against a schema. And right now, people can in theory do this, but they have to do it manually, right? They have to figure out how to apply validation against the JSON schema.
So this leads us to a further problem because the spec is always moving, right? If we fix our validation to some kind of level and somebody adds a facet, adds a field to a facet, and what happens if validation doesn't recognize the field or facet?
So
this is where I want to chime in here because like I've been actually like on this problem recently. So I've been trying to implement the JSON schema validation aspect against OpenLineage. And there's like a couple little problems of like the facets are versioned individually, which is fine. But there contains a back reference to the schema, which is versioned, which may be not the same schema that you're currently using, right? So like the producer is producing, version, 1.05, but the facets are 1.03, back reference to 1.03 schema. So like there's a couple ways to like dereference facets, which I don't know what the proper solution here is, which is why I wanted to bring it up, because like you can have a schema store that is like a remote repository that you can then you download like dereferenced schemas. So like we introduce our facets, the facets are like explicitly defined for like a series of like validated facets. So like we may be able to just like dereference that right into the main OpenLineage specification. But yeah, I'm not like 100% sure where to go there. And there's bugs in the OpenLineage or in JSON schema validation in general. Like there's supposed to be no cyclical, or for like major implementers. So like the Vertex JSON schema has a bug of like being able to dereference, like custom facets because of that. It's not cyclical, but it thinks it's cyclical, so it fails. So yeah, I ran into a bunch of problems with that.
I may have caused this. I think one solution to this is probably to split out the base types into a separate file, and that would remove all like cycle in between the files. On the other hand, if we actually add to the repo a tool that validates this, it will force us to clean up all of this and make it really work well, right? I think like the reason this is difficult to implement, right? It's because we haven't made it part of the project. And if we make it part of the project, we make it easy to validate. And I think that's where we would remove all of those things. So I think we should, yeah, I'm very interested in what you've been building, because I think that would be really helpful as part of this discussion to have this tool.
I think it is becoming part of the project. So I have run into the exactly same problem when I was working on the client-side proxy, and client-side proxy is implementing the lineage event validation, and I was trying to use the schema validator that in Go, and tried a couple of validators, but yeah, because of the spec that the relative references to the facet, and by the spec, when this JSON schema, when the JSON schema has the relative references, that it combines the relative refs with the parent document ID and determine the URL of it. But because of that, the validator is not working. So I kind of did a workaround that they validate the main document first, and I know the list of facets, so kind of just manually walk through each facet and create a separate schema file for each facet, that kind of things. But yeah, it was a little tricky, and now the client proxy is part of the main OpenLineage project. So once we fix the spec and we by continually just validating against the client proxy, we can make sure that the spec is compliant to the JSON schema.
I love that. Does anybody else have examples of their own validations?
Well, I
I
have to
think
admit, we cheat. We do.
Silence.
If stuff passes through Ageria, we push it to Marquez, and if Marquez says it's okay, we assume our events are good. So we use.
I mean, that's perfectly valid because you're validating against, that Marquez will be able to see it. But
That's right.
do you have like a test suite, or are you just kind of like looking at the graph and go, that looks right?
No, we have a suite of well, we have two things. So we can take events from a third party, pass it through Ageria, augment it, and push it out to different downstream. So it could be Marquez or the file system. And then also when our processing engine is running, it produces OpenLineage events, and then we push them to Marquez to display and show the process is running in Ageria. So yeah, I mean, basically, in lieu of anything to validate, if Marquez says it's okay, it's okay.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is, in that final, like you push it to Marquez, that you can see things, is it an automated validation test of saying, okay, it got into Marquez and the graph looks good, or is it?
No, I've been doing it manually.
Eyeballs. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, this is one of the tricky things about validating the consumers, right? Is because Marquez actually doesn't do any validation according to the spec, right? Marquez consumes OpenLineage events and deserializes from JSON into Java objects, and then, like Willie said, kind of stores the OpenLineage, the raw OpenLineage event, and then we parse like the input and output data sets and a handful of the facets, like the data set schema facet and things like that. But really, we don't do any validation according to the spec. And so, right, how do you really know that the consumer is, again, going back to like what I said earlier, how do you know that they're correctly using the data that's in the OpenLineage event?
I mean, I've been manually looking at the graph and making sure it looks like the process that ran, but that's not good enough when we're looking at this sort of compliance at all. It's all very well for a manual test when we're just trying to prove the functions vaguely working, but I think what we're talking about here is something much more locked down.
Yeah, and I really like what Mandy, what you were saying earlier about what you guys have with Ageria, is that like how you have these compliance badges or whatever, because like I was kind of imagining, like for OpenLineage, we have this kind of like generic lineage data that people might want to consume, like column level lineage or table level lineage, right? It would be really cool if we had a way of validating consumers to say, okay, yes, we are compliant with data set lineage, and we can prove that given this OpenLineage message, we have extracted the correct job to data lineage by returning some data through an API. But then, like, if I'm a consumer, right, I don't want to just necessarily consume or have this product that I'm evaluating just consume lineage. I might want to have it consume operational metadata for my, for example, Airflow instance, right? So now I want to know if that consumer is not just OpenLineage, like generically compliant, but are they also like Airflow compliant? Can I find information about my operators? Can I find information about like those runtime facets that Kuba was talking about earlier? Or if I have all my stuff in Spark or in Apache Beam or something like that, are they compliant with those particular technologies? I think it'd be really cool if we could have some way of applying badges for compliance for those like specific technologies to consumers.
So I think this is, so I'm sorry. So I hate to break the discussion, but we're arriving to the end of the hour. Sorry about that. So I think we should discuss the follow-up rather than, this is great discussion, right? And we should keep going. So maybe as a follow-up, so Mandy, we have your document. I don't know who's interested in participating in a proposal about this, right? So obviously Sheeri cares about this. I think like from what I hear, Michael, Mindy, like Minkyu probably, others are interested. So I would suggest we follow up. There's this Slack channel that we created. I put it in the Zoom chat, where we can continue the conversation and use the doc, I would think, to kind of define a spec and, you know, contribute to the repo.
Yeah, and let me just, you know, I am not an approver, but let me just say, as somebody who's worked on these kinds of projects, if you have a test, like check it in, like somebody, maybe Julianne, you can make a project, you know, a repo, and, you know, check it in, and then we can red pen it.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that really helped me was the number of sample payloads that were checked into OpenLineage that I then used to feed at Egeria. That really sped things up. So.
Oh yeah, you're and just to clarify, you're very welcome to contribute either by commenting on other people's work or anything. You don't need to be approved to contribute to the project, right? And so please do provide feedback, and yeah, this is all very welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we'll follow up asynchronously, and I propose that we continue this with another agenda item next time.
Very nice. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you then.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next time, and see you on Slack in the meantime.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I think I've got everything from the chat. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.